Hey, we believe that note takers are what? So grab something to take notes. Tonight, we're starting a brand new series called Silent Killers. Silent Killers. Can you say silent killers? That was super lame. Or maybe I just can't hear very well with my cold. Can you say silent killers? Here's the deal. Some of the most dangerous things in life are not loud or obvious, but these can be things that can quietly destroy us from the inside out. And in this series, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at 3 different silent killers that attack your generation specifically, and discover how Jesus can bring freedom to that. So tonight, we're talking about mental health. Next week, we're going to be discussing lust and pornography. And the week after that, we're going to be talking about social media. So, hey, this is a great series for you guys to be here. Bring friends. Because we're going to dive in deep. Tonight, the title of the message is, Who Told You That? Can you write down, Who Told You That? I have the passion of 100% volume with the voice of 10%. So we'll see how many voice cracks I got, how many squeaks we got going. Who told you that? Has anyone in the room ever been sick before like I am? And you Google search your symptoms to find out what Google has to say, right? It's like I had an earache a month ago, and it's telling me that I'm going deaf, right? It's like Google will tell you the most extreme things. You guys ever done that? You guys ever done that before? Had that experience? I actually did do I went to a doctor appointment one time because I Google searched my symptoms, and it said I had some kind of rare disease. Hope maybe, I don't know. It was like a 20% chance of some rare disease. And so I went in and distraught, and I went up to him like, Doctor, I need to talk to you now. I have blank disease. And guess what question he asked me? Who told you that? And I'm like, well, look here. ChatGPT says, and I think it's interesting that the doctor wanted to know who told you that. Because the people that tell you certain things in life can help build or destroy your life. And so tonight, when we're talking about mental health, we're going to be addressing not the clinical side of things. I am no expert. Tonight, we're going to be not just addressing the symptom of just depression, anxiety, and negative thoughts, but the goal is to get a little bit deeper. And I understand that when I say mental health, this is a broad topic with a large spectrum of how it affects people. There may be someone in the room where you've been clinically diagnosed with depression or anxiety. Maybe for you, you don't struggle at all with this to some degree. But what I do know is if you're like, hey, this isn't a struggle for me, I do know for the stats we're about to show that there's someone close to you that likely does struggle. And so we're going to talk about this. Trigger warning, we will briefly mention suicide and self-harm. If you need to go into the gym or to the lobby because of that, you're more than welcome to. This is a room that I want to just create as an open and safe place for us to discuss this, because I know that if Satan can get a hold of this next generation, he's going to try to get a hold of your mind. Because before you act on something, there's always a thought that comes before the action. And if he can try to destroy your mental life, he can destroy your spiritual life. So, here's what we're going to do. I read a book recently called Anxious Generation. I'm going to try this, see if it works. Oh, yeah, there you go. Sweet, it works. It's called Anxious Generation. I would recommend for high schoolers, maybe not middle schoolers, I'd recommend this book to you because it goes in depth. This guy named Jonathan Haidt, it analyzes your generation and Gen Alpha, and specifically addresses mental health and the following issues that we're going to be discussing the next 3 weeks. But here are some of the research graphs he found showing the reality of mental health among teenagers today. Let's look at the first one. First is major depression among teens. This graph right here shows a teenager who had not just a minor depressive incident where they just have a negative thought, or even like a thought to hurt themselves, but this is a major depressive incident that he discusses, where if you look between where the gray is, between 2010 and 2015, the following the graphs are going to have that gray area. Jonathan talks about how this gap this time frame between 2010 and 2015, what happened during this time frame? This is when the introduction of social media blew up. This also is when the front-facing selfie was introduced to most cell phones. The front-facing camera was introduced to cell phones. People now taking curated images, editing images of yourself. So the focus on self increases. Social media, increase of self, and then comparison that goes with it. I'm not going to get too in-depth with that. But you notice there's always an increase within this gap. But specifically, it's impacted females more than guys. Let's look at the next graph. Mental illness among college students. They specifically see that anxiety and depression are two of the biggest forms of mental health, issues of mental health, that have increased in this time frame. ADHD, bipolar, somewhat steadied, but those specifically have increased. Let's look at another one. So this goes to age, anxiety prevalence. Unfortunately, we don't have a younger age on there, but Jonathan, the author, talks about how the increase is very similar to ages 18 to 25. Significant increase with your generation and even with Gen Alpha, that there's a significant increase. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is emergency room visits for self-harm. You can see, obviously, that between 2010 and 2015, there's a correlation between the increase, again, of social media with it. Now, a question that comes from why doesn't it increase as much for guys? One thing that he discusses that for boys are more likely to, how did I write it? Boys are more likely to resort to hurting themselves more severely than girls. So that's why boys are more likely to just end their life or attempt to end their life versus by cutting themselves or in one of those means. And then we'll look at here, suicide rates for you. This proves that point. So that suicide rates have increased for both guys and girls, especially for boys. And again, you see that time period between 2010 and 2015. I think this is one more. This is now depression levels associated with the time spent on social media. For those of you who are like, oh yeah, like social media isn't really impacting me, I'd beg to differ that it hasn't impacted your mental health at all. You can see that the more time spent on social media, the increase of depression levels, especially among girls. Now, the mental health of students is an issue that needs to be addressed. And if you're seeking spiritual health, you desire to get closer to God, we need to look inward, and we need to address, tonight what we're going to address is what and how we think, okay? Because again, if the enemy can grab a hold of your mind, he can impact how you live, how you act. But in order to move forward, I believe we're going to have to look backward. In order to move forward, we're going to have to look backward. And so that's why tonight we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 3. So if you have your Bible, go with me to Genesis, first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 3. I'm actually going to be reading from the Message translation. Genesis chapter 3. We're going to be looking at Adam and Eve and their conversation with Satan or the serpent, okay? Actually, we'll use this. Adam and Eve and the serpent's conversation with them, okay? Has anyone ever read this before? You've read like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, all that stuff. How many of you guys, this is like brand new? You have not read this? Be honest. Okay. Well, thank you. I know that there are more than that, but thank you for being honest. Here's what we're going to do. Let's look at it. We're going to start, so chapter 3, first 11 verses. Let's look at it. The serpent was clever, and this is, again, the Message, which is a paraphrase. We don't have time to, it's just a little bit shorter, so it'll still read the same point. The serpent was clever, more clever than any wild animal God had made. He spoke to the woman, and he said, "Do I understand that God told you not to eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, and again, the serpent, Satan, is all about coercion and twisting words. But the woman said, "Not at all. We can eat from the trees in the garden. It's only about the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, don't eat from it, don't even touch it, or you'll die." The serpent told the woman, you won't die. God knows at the moment you eat from that tree, you'll see what's really going on. You'll be just like God, knowing everything, ranging all the way from good to evil. When the woman saw that the tree looked good to eat, realized that she would get out of it, she'd know everything. So she took and she ate the fruit, gave some to her husband, and ate. Okay, so they committed the sin, right? The enemy talked them into it. Immediately, the two of them did see what's really going on. They saw themselves naked. They sewed fig leaves together as makeshift clothes for themselves. And then when they heard the sound of God strolling in the garden, watch this, the man and his wife hid. And that usually, we're no strangers to, when we get caught doing something, or after we make a mistake, we like to hide. Just like Adam and Eve did, they hid in the trees of the garden, hid from God. Now watch this. God called to the man, "Where are you?" Even though he knew where they're at. He said, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid." God said, "Who told you that you were naked?" God said, just the 4 words. Can you repeat after me? Who told you that? One more time. Who told you that? That's the question. I think it's super interesting. God's response to Adam and Eve after they sinned, his main concern wasn't to make them feel bad about their action, but it was addressing the root. Who told you that? Because Eve was listening to Satan. She acted on the sin. Who are you listening to? See, the reality is that God isn't seeking to change your actions. He wants to help identify the answer to the question, who have you been listening to? Who told you that? Because who you listen to will determine what you believe about yourself and what you believe about God. Who you listen to will determine what you believe about self and what you believe about God. There's a story I shared maybe a few years ago. Some of you may recognize it. There's a guy named Billy Hornsby, okay? Billy Hornsby. There's a pastor named Chris Hodges. Billy is the father-in-law to Chris. Chris Hodges is one of the best, it leads one of the biggest churches in the country. But anyways, he was sharing one time about his father-in-law, Billy, who is a brilliant dude. From the moment he's born, he in elementary school, he skipped a grade, smarter than everybody else. Middle school, he was the top of his class, right? Smarter than everybody else, like tutoring other people in middle school. Gets to the point of 8th grade. 8th grade, he's in math class, okay? And the teacher, I don't know if they still do this. Do you guys ever have it in any of your classes where the teacher writes a problem on the board and you have to, she asks one of you come up and fill it, tell the answer or write down the answer on the board? Do they still do that? Yeah. So the teacher did that. Hey, wrote a math problem that was pretty difficult on the board. Does anyone want to solve it? No one raises their hand. Billy looks around. He's like, oh, I'll solve it. Raises his hand. He goes up and he fills it out. But this is back at the time. I don't know if they still do this for you guys. Do they still require you to show your work for math problems? I hate that, man. It's like, bro. I guess that also helps out, if you're actually using ChatGPT. But ChatGPT will probably tell you how it goes. But anyways, Billy went up there. He wrote the answer down, put down the marker, went back to his seat. The teacher said, Billy, you're wrong. And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, you're wrong. He said, no, I'm right. That's the answer. She said, yes, that's the right answer, but you didn't show your work. And so Billy, and this was not good that he did this, was disrespectful, but he's like, that is the right answer. I don't care if I show my work. Like stood up and said that to her. And the teacher just got really frustrated at Billy, and out of that anger, the teacher said, Billy, you're never going to amount to anything. And I'm like, man, wow, pretty harsh. I took a drastic turn. Billy, you'll never amount to anything. From that moment in 8th grade, when that was spoken over him, that phrase began to define his life. Billy, who's a brilliant dude, ended up dropping out of high school. When he was 16, he learned how to play the guitar. No joke, he literally went to bars and would play guitar for money. Like that was his means of income. Was going playing guitar at different bars. He had a girlfriend, ended up getting the girlfriend pregnant at 17. Eventually, and this guy, again, he was brilliant, so he had a lot of dreams and different aspirations in regard to career. But he ended up just working a construction job for quite a while. And he was in his, I think he was mid to late 20s when he was working construction, and there was an opportunity to work at a higher level. Like there was this leadership opportunity to work at a different location to do something that is kind of new within the organization. And he's like, you know what, why not? I'll take the test to apply for it. And so he does. He takes the test. And after he takes the test, his boss calls him up. He says, Billy, I need you to come into my office. And Billy, when he found that out, he's like, dude, again, going back to 8th grade, that was stamped on his heart. You'll never amount to anything. So he told the boss over the phone, he's like, if I didn't make it, why don't you just tell me? Why don't you just tell me now? I don't want to go into your office. He said, Billy, we need to talk to you. So he goes in, he's frustrated, but he goes into his office, and the boss of his job says, Billy, we've never had anyone score so well on this test before. There's something very different, very significant about you. And the boss, Billy didn't even realize, the boss didn't even realize that this was taking place. The boss continued saying, hey, I think you're going to get this position, but if you continue to work as well as you do, you'll really amount to something one day. Notice the change. That completely reversed the curse, if you will, in his life, where Billy went on eventually to he worked in church ministry, planted a bunch of churches throughout Europe, helped start one of the largest denominations known as ARC, A-R-C, with some other people. All because that boss said the opposite of what was spoken over him in 8th grade. Whether we realize it or not, we all operate, for better or for worse, based on what's been spoken over us or what we think about ourselves. So here's my question. When it comes to what you believe about yourself, who are you listening to? Who have you allowed to speak into your life? That is huge. Who have you allowed to speak into your life, to define your identity, what you believe about yourself? Do they have the credibility to speak into your life? Can you trust what they say is true? Do they have the credibility? Think about this. If you're trying to learn an instrument, let's say you're trying to learn the piano. If you're trying to learn the piano from someone who's never touched a piano before, it's kind of stupid, right? You wouldn't listen to that person. If you're trying to learn how to play basketball from someone who's never touched a basketball, doesn't make sense. The reason why God to Adam and Eve goes back to who told you that is because God knows Satan has zero credibility to speak into the identity of your life. Yet we give him access so much. So when it comes to poor mental health, I believe that there are many students who believe something to be true about them, without ever going back to ask the question, who told me that? Like if only Billy were to go back, freshman year of high school, sophomore year of high school, before he dropped out, before he made the decision, whatever, and said, should I let my 8th grade teacher define my life for the future, for the next few years? Who told you that? Here's the question tonight. There are many in the room. I'm going to list off some terms or some adjectives that maybe you believe about yourself. Tonight, we're asking the question, who told you it? Because again, I've been learning, if I need to move forward in life with some things, I need to take a look back into my past to address some things that I've been believing. Who told me this before I move forward? So for you, who told you that you were stupid? Who told you that you were weird, awkward, annoying, not important, invisible, unlovable, a failure, unwanted, always alone? Who told you that? Who are you giving access to your life, to your mental state, defining who you believe yourself to be? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have Ellie come up. We're going to close here in a second. I'm going to have every student in the room here in a second. You're going to come up and you're going to grab one of these cards. I'm going to explain what we're doing with these cards in a second, but you're each going to grab one of these and a pen. For those of you who have a pen of your own, we don't have as many up here, so just keep the one that you have and let others grab from up here. You're going to grab one of these, a pen. If you want to, you're welcome to grab one of these as well. This is going to be helpful for later, but you guys can come on up right now at this time and then spread out somewhere in the room. Find a spot by yourself in the room. Grab one, then find a spot by yourself. Find a spot in the room by yourself, by yourself, by yourself. Be along the wall, be back at your seat. Find a spot by yourself. I'll go up here, actually. Find a spot by yourself. Students, I want you to know before we do this, we as leaders have been praying for you. Please listen up if you can. We as leaders have been praying for you before service started, because I know that there is a reality that maybe some of you came in tonight with plans to end it. Maybe you've thought about doing it before. Maybe you've hurt yourself before. Maybe for you, you've been cutting yourself in your arms, your side, your legs, in places where people can't see. Because as long as people can't see the cut marks, as long as they can't see the scars, then I'm all good. This topic's been close to my heart because I think I was 12 years old. One night at home, my brother was having an intense fight with my parents. And this wasn't unusual. But my sister and I were crying in our room because things were being thrown. Cops were called. To talk to my brother. And my brother, right before we were going to bed, he burst into our room. And I'll never forget this. Burst into our room. And he shows us his arm. And it was bloody. He showed me the knife in his hand. And he said, "This is what I do." Never forget it. And then fast forward a little bit. I think I was 14. And one night, my sister, who never really had like a rebellious stage or whatever, My sister one night all of a sudden screams from her room. She sleeps on the second floor. Screams from her room. It's like 10 p.m. My parents rush up in her room and what's wrong? What's wrong? What's going on? And how she described it was I tried to stab my hands. Tried to stab my arms. I couldn't do it. My hands just froze up. And she's just crying. And I'm getting emotional, right? And you know, my parents are too, and because I never knew she struggled with that. And so this is close to my heart because whether you struggle with this in any way or this has been a daily battle, I believe the enemy's goal is trying to steal, kill, and destroy your life. But if you follow that verse, it says, I, Jesus, comes that you may have life, so that you may live. What I realized from my brother and my sister is that they were listening to things from friends, from bullies, from things that the enemy's telling them. They've been listening to things that are not what God says about them, and so that's why they acted on it. So here's what we're going to do. Everybody, close your eyes. And here's what you're going to think about. I want you to think about, for the next minute or two, who are you? Your name, who you are. What words come to mind when you think about yourself? And first, what I want you to do is to think about the positive traits that come to mind, okay? Some of you, this will be easy. Some of you, this will be hard because of negative thoughts. Think of the positive traits of your personality, what people like about you, what you're good at. Start to think about those things, okay? Now, I want you to think about what negative words come to mind when you think about yourself. Be honest. Maybe it's because of a mistake that you made, a weakness you have, an insult that was shared over you, spoken over you. Now, here's an important part. Go back to who told you this? Who spoke this over your life? Was it a bully? Was it someone trying to hurt you or make you feel bad? Was it a sibling? Maybe a parent or a teacher spoke out in anger. Was it a negative thought after being humiliated or after a mistake you made? Now I want you to ask this. Ask yourself, does this person have the credibility to let this define your future? Does this person, including negative thoughts of the enemy, if you can't find a person to trace this back to, does this person have the credibility to let this define your future? Can I tell you, I've realized that the negative things I believe about myself typically originate from somewhere in my past. And you heard me say it, we must look back in order to move forward. Some of you will remember, when I was in middle school, I was a bully, specifically to the three smartest girls in my class. And I didn't realize until later that the reason why I bullied them was because of my own insecurity and because they were smarter than me, and I had some things spoken over me to where I believed I was dumb. To where in high school I had some best friends, and they know this, but they made there was some comments made where like, Tony, you wouldn't understand this. And it was not a demeaning thing, but it really hit me. So I went back home and I said, God, why is this hurting me so bad? It's like, well, you got to go back to middle school. You got to go back to when they told you that, what they spoke over you. What negative word has Satan used to label you that God wants to relabel tonight? The picture I got when we were in pre-service prayer is, if you guys ever been to the beach before and like you write with your finger in the sand close to the shore You write something, and then what happens? The wave comes and it just washes it away. I saw that because I believe that that's a picture tonight of the enemy. He's sitting down. He's drawing this label over your life. And you believe it. Well, I must be stupid. I must be annoying. I must be a bad friend. I must be a mistake. I must be, you fill it in. And the enemy's writing it on your heart, just like he did Billy's. But what I believe tonight is that Jesus died to make your mental state whole. Look back at the story, Genesis chapter 3. What happens? Adam and Eve get caught in a sin. They hide. He said, who told you that? But then watch. God doesn't condemn Adam and Eve. For those of you who don't know the story, that's where God makes the first sacrifice for humanity. He kills an animal, and he then, because their first had just fig leaves and stuff on, and God dressed them, it says. Chapter 3, verse 11. God covered them, dressed them, because, hey, this doesn't need to define you. This isn't the end. For some of you, you need to know that. Tonight, this year, this school year, does not need to be the end. What if God has so much more for you? What if God wants to relabel you? What if God has a better word for you? So here's what we're going to do. You guys have that paper. For some of you, when I asked you to think of a negative word, one flashed before your eyes immediately. You're going to write that down on that one of the sides. Write down whatever negative word Satan has gotten you to believe about yourself, that you're realizing tonight it's been impacting you, whether you want to admit it or not. What is that one word? Just write that down on one side. If you're to be honest, what is that one word Satan's trying to write on your heart to label you by it? And what I want to do is a second, I want you, and I'll pray as well, but I want you to pray out loud if you're comfortable. If you're not, you don't have to. I want you to pray that this word and this identity has no hold on you any longer. You guys remember, right, the 3 girls that I would bully in middle school? God had a full circle moment for me. I realized it was my insecurity. And then in college, I saw them walking down the hallway. Hadn't seen them in years. Saw them walking down the hallway. God made us cross paths. And they immediately saw me and like, hey, how's it going? Immediately I felt convicted. You need to apologize. You need to admit this was your own insecurity. And I did. And there was a freeing that for me at least, came upon me in that moment, just to admit it. So right now, close your eyes. And if you're comfortable, I just want you to start speaking out. Like, God, I don't want this to hold my future. God, I cut ties with this word. I cut ties with this identity. God, this person, whether it be a bully, whether it's Satan himself, whether it's whoever it is, they have no credibility to define me. God, I allow you to define my life, to relabel what's been spoken over me. Use your own words. And now on this other side, what I want you to do is ask, God, what is the word you're speaking over me right now? God, what is one word you're speaking? And that's why we have these sheets of paper up here. So if you need help with this, maybe if you don't know the Bible very well, come up here. Grab one of these pieces of paper. And is there one particular verse of identity that God's speaking over you? Write it down on that other side. How is God wanting to relabel? What's he wanting to speak it? If you're like, hey, I don't know if this is God or not, God's the giver, the producer of life. Does the word bring life? Does the identity bring life? Write that down. Pray it out loud over yourself. God, thank you that you say I am blank. Jesus says it says in his word that when you give your life to Jesus, the old is gone, the new has come. What new identity? If you've given your life to Jesus, what new identity is he writing? Write it down. I'm going to have Ellie start singing. And we're going to dim the lights. I understand tonight for some this may be heavy. Leaders, can I have you maybe go to the sides or maybe up here? I don't know. Find a spot where students, if you want to go talk to a leader, if you want to pray with a leader, maybe for you, you need to hand them this. Because maybe for you, you just need the vulnerability. Maybe it's hard for you to speak it out loud and you say, hey, pray for me. This is the old, this is the new. Maybe for you, you need to do that. We're going to dim the lights. Ellie's going to worship. However you feel like you need to respond. Maybe you need to stand up. Maybe you need to worship and say, God, I don't want anything else. All I want is you. Help relabel. God, help my mental health, not just spiritual health, because it first starts in our mind, because your mind is a battlefield. Lord, I pray students would be honest and vulnerable tonight. This is a safe place for us to be real. None of us have our lives completely together. Would we be honest? Would we go back? Would we look back in order to move forward? In Jesus' name, let's worship. Let's respond however you want to.